The earliest records of humanity are from a time when barter was the means of exchange of goods. Trading physical items for each other is, of course, limited. How much wheat is a cow worth? How do you figure that out? It's a difficult system. So it was not long before precious metals like copper, silver, and gold began to be used as a currency, since they could be melted down and stamped into coins. The book of Genesis itself mentions that Abraham used silver to purchase some land. Precious metals and other rare luxury items like diamonds or pearls remained the basis of exchange until the gradual and at the time controversial addition of paper money, beginning in China in the 7th century and then spreading from there. Paper money can be increased to meet the demand, unlike precious metals, which are a lot harder to get more of, which is a big advantage. But they can also be printed excessively by unscrupulous governments or institutions, which is the biggest disadvantage of paper money. Paper money requires trust in the institution that is behind it. If people don't trust the money, they won't accept it in exchange. We now actually live in a society that's becoming more and more cashless, as credit cards, debit cards, and various other things, even just your phone, have made it so that you don't need coins, cash, or even checks. Organized societies that were thinking anything more complicated than hunter-gatherers or subsistence farmers, they need money. Goods have to be exchanged. Abundances for scarcities and vice versa. Services rendered need to be paid for. Loans need to be made and collected. It's not the presence of money that God objects to. It was Jesus himself who famously said, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's," confirming the propriety of paying your taxes in coinage. God has no problem with our use of money. What he warns repeatedly about in his word is the danger of the love of money. In our text today from Acts, his ministry, the ministry of Paul sharing the gospel will be confronted by a people whose primary concern is their love of money. Well, something's going to have to give there, for as we know, you can't love both God and money. So we'll begin our text in verses 21 and 22 of Acts chapter 19. The text says this: "After all this had happened, Paul decided to go to Jerusalem, passing through Macedonia and Achaia. After I have been there, he said, I must visit Rome also. He sent 2 of his helpers, Timothy and Erastus, to Macedonia, while he stayed in the province of Asia a little longer." So we hear about Paul's plans to return to Jerusalem via Macedonia and Achaia, and then eventually go to Rome. Having spent more than 2 years establishing the church at Ephesus and spreading the gospel throughout the surrounding province of Asia, Paul now recognizes that he needs to continue on. He plans to revisit the churches in Greece before returning to Jerusalem once more. Paul also has plans for a 4th missionary journey already in the works, one that would have used Rome as the base of operations to share the gospel in the western half of the empire. He dreamed of getting as far as Spain in the ministry. Now that 4th journey never happened, for Paul's enemies back in Judea will intervene when he returns there and manage to get him arrested. We're told that he sent 2 of his helpers, Timothy and Erastus, ahead of him to Macedonia, and he stayed there a little longer. Paul sends an advance team on ahead. They need to make preparations for his upcoming visit while he finishes up loose ends in Ephesus. Luke doesn't always mention them, but Paul relied heavily upon his dedicated group of companions, Luke himself being one of those travelers with Paul, along with people that you've heard of like Timothy and Titus and Philemon, Priscilla and Aquila that we've also talked about, but also others like Erastus, whom we only hear about here. There were more than just those. Some of them are never even mentioned, and we're going to learn about 2 more of them in our text today. The point is, Paul was not alone. He certainly relied upon the power of God that was given him by the Holy Spirit, but he also relied upon the men and women who gave of themselves, sacrificing to help Paul, and at times risking their lives to help him, because they loved Paul as a man of God, and they certainly believed in the gospel message that he was sharing. Paul's name is the one that history remembers, of course, but without his wide array of supporters, he would never have been able to impact the world as he did. Now that we know his plans, something's going to slow them up. 23 to 26. At that time, there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in no little business for the craftsmen. He called them together along with the workmen in related trades and said, "Men, you know we receive a good income from this business. And you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus and in practically the whole province of Asia. He says that man-made gods are no gods at all." So at that time there arose a great disturbance about the way. I don't know about you, but I can't hear the words great disturbance together anywhere without in my mind hearing Alec Guinness speaking those words. I felt a great disturbance in the forest. That's just how I grew up. I can't help it. That famous portrayal of Obi-Wan speaking those words to Mark Hamill as Luke. But the disturbance that is caused here is not from an evil empire blowing up a planet. That's not what we're dealing with. It's the massive success of the gospel in Ephesus and throughout the province of Asia. That is causing a disturbance. What is about to happen is a reaction against that growth among the people. Few things can stir up a community with as much emotion as a major shift in their midst in religious beliefs. And so what happens? A silversmith named Demetrius, who makes the silver shrines for Artemis, got a lot of money out of that, and he brought everyone together and said, "Hey, you know we make a lot of money from this." The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The building was 400 by 200 feet, so that's bigger than a football field. And it attracted thousands upon thousands of pilgrims each year who came to worship the idol of Artemis. This idol was, as far as we can tell, a meteorite, which was said to resemble a multi-breasted woman. And thus a fertility cult arose around it that became loosely associated with the Greek goddess Artemis. In addition, the temple treasury there acted as a regional bank, bringing even more money into Ephesus, whose economic livelihood depended on these pilgrims. The whole town depended on it. To make matters more precarious, the harbor at Ephesus, which was once very useful, had been greatly reduced in its effectiveness from the silt deposits from the river that it sat alongside, thus increasing the dependence of the city on the cult of Artemis and on the tourists for its continued high standard of living. If you want to think of a parallel, this is actually a fairly close parallel. Consider the near total dependence of the city of Las Vegas upon gambling. If something were to threaten the daily flow of outside tourists come to spend money at the casinos, not only would the casino owners be worried, but all of the people that work for and own and are associated with the hotels, the restaurants, and who knows how many other businesses would be in danger. The Temple of Artemis was good for business. It's very good for business. And so Demetrius says, you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus and practically the whole province of Asia. By leading them astray, Demetrius is referring to Paul's preaching of the good news, a message, you know, of forgiveness and hope, not to mention love and kindness. So why should anyone care about that? There were many religions in the ancient world, of all kinds, so many of them that you've never heard of most of them, and most of them are long forgotten. Who cares that a new one is gaining popularity? It happened all the time. Why would that upset people? Well, here's the first clue. Paul says that man-made gods are no gods at all. You see, unlike all the other religions, all the other cults and philosophies that were everywhere, Paul is preaching an exclusive message that requires its followers to reject all other objects of worship and devotion. Paul is not preaching a God, but the God. And that makes all the difference. The only other group that taught this oddball notion that in our world today, over half of the people of the world believe in monotheism of one kind or another. But in the ancient world, it was virtually unknown. The only other people that were onto that idea were the Jews. Paul happened to be a Jew too. The Jews were officially tolerated in the Roman Empire legally. They had a legal right to practice their religion. But in sharp contrast to Paul, they really had no interest in proselytizing, that is in witnessing and missionary activity. They didn't really feel the need to win converts amongst the Gentiles. The Jews were content to keep to themselves. As you know, Paul was not. Paul wasn't willing to teach that any old god will do, whichever one you want. He was adamant that there is only one God, and equally adamant that God takes no pleasure in idols. In fact, God hates them. You can see the potential problem in Ephesus, right? A city whose economy is built upon the cultic worship of an idol is being transformed by belief of a growing number of its people that human idols are absolutely worthless. Now, this same confrontation between Christianity and local religion will repeat itself again and again down through the centuries as the gospel spreads across Europe and then to the New World, to Africa, etc., etc. In the end, the Word of God will destroy nearly all of the polytheistic and animistic worship of other gods, at least outside of the Far East. But it won't be without a fight. Much blood will be shed in defense of the old gods before the one true God is accepted. Well, let's see what happens here, verse 27. There is danger, not only that our trade will lose its good name, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be discredited, and the goddess herself, who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the whole world, will be robbed of her divine majesty. There is danger, not only that our trade will lose its good name. Now, Demetrius, as you just heard, goes on to say a lot of things about other issues, and they matter too. But the heart of the argument is the first thing that he has to say. The issue is money. Endanger a man's livelihood, and you've got his attention. Around here, I think we certainly understand the pain of unemployment, so we know what's going on. The tourist industry in Ephesus made a lot of money, a whole lot, so that those involved in it lived better lives than they could have doing anything else. If belief in the one God of Paul continues to spread more than it already has, the flow of pilgrims to the Temple of Artemis will slow to a trickle. Businesses will close, and Ephesus will become not unlike Detroit or Cleveland. A once glorious city, now a shell of its former splendor, struggling to adapt, struggling to survive. Now, we know that businesses and industries come and go. It's inevitable. People might try to hold on to them. People try to maintain them past their efficient date. Downturns are inevitable. It's part of life. But Ephesus had a good thing going, and Demetrius isn't ready to close up shop and try his business elsewhere. Before we become too sympathetic with the artisans and the shopkeepers of Ephesus, remember that the temple employed countless prostitutes alongside its priests, that it gave people a false sense of hope, and in the end was wasting their hard-earned money even more than a Las Vegas casino. The pilgrims may have spent that money freely. They may have felt better when they left, but they were still being swindled. Hard-working regular folk deserve our sympathy when the mine closes or the factory shuts down. But the Temple of Artemis is not just another business. It's a cult, worshiping a hunk of rock that neither hears nor responds to the prayers made to it. And it's blinding people to the God who actually made them, who loves them, and who wants to redeem them. The Temple of Artemis is an enemy of the gospel. It just happens to also be a profitable one for the local economy. So save your sympathy for people whose jobs don't derive from sending people away from God. He went on to say the temple of the great goddess will be discredited. The goddess herself, who's worshipped throughout the province and around the world, will be robbed of her divine majesty. I think that if the divine majesty of a god can be robbed by people deciding they don't want to worship it anymore, wasn't all that majestic in the first place? A true God would have majesty and dominion of his own, no matter what people do. For how can human beings affect the divine? God is owed, the real God, our God, is owed our love and devotion because he is God. Our love and devotion is not what makes God, God. For God was God before he created time, the universe, or us. Demetrius began his speech with the most important thing to him, and that was his wallet. Having established the self-centered motive to oppose Paul, he now turns to the cause of civic pride. Demagogues nearly always appeal to civic, ethnic, or nationalistic pride. They whip up masses into a frenzy to blind them to the cost of following. Mussolini is a classic example. He excited the Italian people by selling them on a promise that the glory of the Roman Empire would return to them, only to in reality yoke them to an alliance to Nazi Germany and set them on a path not of conquest and glory, but of destruction, when the people realized their folly was far too late. Demetrius has provided the motive that will appeal to the merchants, their money, and now the motive that will appeal to the masses of the people, pride. Beware anyone who appeals to your pride and your wallet, whether they be preacher, politician, or businessman. Ask yourself, what's their motive? If I do what they ask, what do they get out of it? The heart of the matter is this. Is the city of Ephesus and its people better off in the long run as a Christian community or as one devoted to Artemis? Artemis offers them wealth and fame, but nothing else. Jesus Christ offers them forgiveness, reconciliation, healing, transformation, character, love, joy, and peace, among other things. But he doesn't offer them wealth, and he doesn't offer them fame. The choice is simple: the gospel of grace or the love of money. The crowd assembled before Demetrius don't know the grace of God, but they do know the fear of losing their money. So they're going to make a choice, whipped into a frenzy by a demagogue that is not in their own best interest. Unfortunately, the history of humanity is littered with bad ideas that were embraced by a mob who were galvanized by a charismatic leader who was acting in his own self-interest. Most of those situations had a much more tragic ending than what's about to unfold here in Ephesus. The love of money is a dangerous motive. It is at the root of all kinds of evil. Not all of the world's evil can be traced to a love of money. Some people just like to watch things be destroyed. But you might be surprised at just how much evil is propelled, at least in part, by people's greed. Verses 28 to 31, what are they going to do about it? When they heard this, they were furious and began shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" Soon the whole city was in uproar. The people seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia, and rushed as one man into the theater. Paul wanted to appear before the crowd, but the disciples would not let him. Even some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul's, sent him a message begging him not to venture into the theater. And that's actually a picture of the outdoor theater of Ephesus there on the right. Huge place, can seat like 20,000 people. There are few things as terrifyingly out of control as a mob. We've all heard of the term mob mentality to describe the frenzy and the bloodlust that can appear seemingly out of nowhere when a crowd suddenly becomes a mob. Why do police use things like water cannons and tear gas, even men on horseback, to try to deflect or control a mob? Because they know how dangerous they really are. The police couldn't stop the LA riots in '92, nor the Detroit riots in '67, and they certainly couldn't stop the New York draft riots in 1863. Even 1,000 cops or 1,000 soldiers cannot contain a mob of tens of thousands, unless they are willing, like the communists in Tiananmen Square in '89, or the Soviets in '68 in Prague, unless they're willing to make the streets flow with the blood of the slain. A riot has begun in Ephesus, one that those who began it hope will reverse the series of the success of the gospel and maintain the dominance of the cult of Artemis. That may be Demetrius' goal, but we know that mobs go their own way once you wind them up and let them loose. First thing that the people did was grab Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia, and they rushed into the theater. Most of us remember the horrific video of that truck driver named Reginald Denny being pulled from his cab during the Rodney King riots in LA in '92 at the corner of Florence and Normandy. Denny was dragged by the mob from his truck, beaten savagely, and then hit with a brick in the head, fracturing his skull in 91 places. Less of you probably remember that an hour later at that same intersection, a Guatemalan immigrant named Fidel Lopez was pulled from his truck, was robbed also and beaten and spray-painted as he lay unconscious of all things. Lopez was rescued by Reverend Benny Newton, who told the rioters, "Kill him, you have to kill me too," as he stood over him. Lopez survived the attack. Newton is fortunate that the mob didn't take him up on that offer. In the end, those riots claimed the lives of 63 people, injured 2,383 people, and led to having more than 12,000 people arrested. The mob in Ephesus has grabbed hold of two men who are known to be connected to Paul. Their lives are clearly in danger. We're told that Paul wanted to appear before the crowd, but the disciples wouldn't let him. Even some of the officials of the province who knew Paul and were his friends, they said, "Don't go into that theater." We don't know what would have happened. What would have happened had Paul tried to intervene, had he tried to speak and calm the crowd? Would it have worked, or would he have just made them more upset? Would they have said, "That's Paul, he's the ringleader, get him"? Paul was brave enough, and he cared enough about his friends to have tried, but they wouldn't let him. The Christians of Ephesus, as well as several government officials who knew him and considered him to be a friend, they didn't let him risk his life in front of the mob. So what's going to happen instead? Verses 32 to 34, we continue. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Most of the people didn't even know why they were there. The Jews pushed Alexander to the front, and some of the crowd shouted instructions to him. He motioned for silence in order to make a defense before the people, but when they realized he was a Jew, they all shouted in unison for about 2 hours, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." So the assembly is in confusion. Some of the people are shouting this, some are that. Most of them don't even know why they got pushed into the theater. That's typical of a mob. This one swept up a lot of people who had no idea what was going on, but had the misfortune of being in the mob's path as it swept toward the outdoor theater. The Jews at that point pushed Alexander to the front, shouting instructions at him. He asked for silence. As a minority, the Jews of Ephesus are fully aware of the danger of a mob to outsiders such as themselves. Countless times in history, the Jews have been targeted by mobs throughout Europe and throughout the Middle East. So they pushed Alexander to the front, I think hoping that he could distance them from Paul, hoping that he could make it clear that Paul didn't speak for them, because they had officially at least not accepted his message and told him to leave the synagogue. But when they realized that he was a Jew, They all shouted in unison for 2 hours, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." So Alexander didn't help. We don't know what his words were. Whatever they were, they had absolutely no chance, because the crowd knew that Jews believed in one and only one God, like Paul, and that Jews rejected idols, like Paul. So it was close enough in their mind. The attempt to calm them only set them off, and for 2 hours they shouted that mantra. In Greek it was Megale ha Artemis Ephesion. And they shouted it like at a sports stadium, ringing through the theater for hours. And then the city clerk stands up, 35 and 36. The city clerk quieted the crowd and said, "Men of Ephesus, doesn't all the world know that the city of Ephesus is the guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and of her image, which fell from heaven? Therefore, since these facts are undeniable, you ought to be quiet and not do anything rash." We don't know the city clerk's name, but he was the executive officer of the city's assembly, the assembly of the citizens, chosen by them and not by Rome. So he was the highest ranking local in Ephesus, actually a fairly important man. Whether he personally cared about what happened to Gaius or Aristarchus, whether he cared about Paul or the gospel, we have no idea. But he did care about the city of Ephesus, about his hometown. Seeing it ransacked by a mob was not something he could stomach. So he calms the crowd first by agreeing with them, by letting them know that he understands their civic pride in the Temple of Artemis. And so he says to them, "These facts are undeniable. You ought to be quiet and not do anything rash." Ephesus was enjoying a significant amount of autonomy in local matters in the Roman Empire. A bloody riot might change all of that. Demetrius had whipped the crowd up with fear. The clerk is calming them down with assurances. Now that he's got them calm, what's he going to tell them? Starting in verse 37. "You have brought these men here, though they've neither robbed temples nor blasphemed our gods." You see, the mob couldn't accuse Paul or his companions of anything criminal. It was not against Roman law to proselytize. Traveling teachers, holy men were common sights. So Demetrius' warning of impending loss of business, that may have been troubling to those who made good money from the Temple of Artemis, but it was not a crime for Paul to share the gospel. Now, if you fast forward another generation, maybe generation and a half or so, when it becomes clear to the various Roman authorities that the Christians are not a part of Judaism, and so they don't enjoy that legal protection, they're actually a new religion, one that does not worship the emperor and will not, then they will begin to persecute the Christians. But for now, Paul has the law on his side. So what's the alternative that the clerk is going to suggest? 38 to 41. "If then Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a grievance against anybody, the courts are open and there are proconsuls. They can press charges. If there's anything further you want to bring up, it must be settled in a legal assembly. As it is, we are in danger of being charged with rioting because of today's events. In that case, we would not be able to account for this commotion, since there's no reason for it." After he had said this, he dismissed the assembly. He starts by talking to them about the option of a lawsuit. The clerk is proposing a legal remedy, a proper and calm solution, instead of mock justice. Because he says, as it is, you're in danger of being charged with rioting. In that case, how would you defend yourselves? There's no reason. And he told them to go home. The clerk, by offering a potential solution through a lawsuit instead of a riot, prevented bloodshed and who knows what else. He may not have been on Paul's side, but I think he's still kind of a hero, at least to the Christians who might have died that day had he not intervened. After his speech, the mob dispersed on its own, averting the crisis. In the long run, Christianity did win out in Ephesus, and that famous temple was destroyed in 268 AD by a band of marauding Goths who burned it. Why did this riot begin? Nearly taking the lives of two of Paul's friends and endangering the whole Christian community in Ephesus? It was the love of money. Christianity threatened money being made from idolatry, just as it should continue to threaten money that is being made in our world today from slavery, from the sex trade, from pornography, from illegal drugs and gambling, and countless other businesses, some of them legal, some of them not, which depend upon cheating and swindling and harming and exploiting our fellow man. God is grieved and angered by such things. When more people take the gospel seriously in a community, when they become disciples of Jesus in earnest, those businesses will lose money, and they will feel threatened, and we should not be surprised if they lash out at God's people. A mob is a frightening and powerful thing, but it's nothing compared to the power of God, through the Holy Spirit and through His church, to transform lives one at a time, and bring lost souls out of the darkness and into the light, to a place where the love of money no longer holds sway.